Part 8 XR500 diesel build. Here I'm just showing you that in the last video, the last part of the lathe work was cutting out these bungs which go in the tube, and they prevent the bolt from pulling through the tube. And so there you see the inner piece, which is threaded, and the outer piece, which I welded the bung onto. And the inner piece goes in the outer piece. Kind of acts like a piston or a hydraulic cylinder or something. And then that threaded bolt, you tighten that down and it draws in the inner tube and puts tension on the system. And so I've got two of these, and one on each side will support a bearing, which will support a kind of a jack shaft, which the clutch assembly rides on. So here's the outer piece, and I cut out some flanges with drilled holes in them, and I'm just welding them to that outer piece. And this will be the swivel point. A bolt will run through that hole on that bracket, and that'll be the kind of the fulcrum to the swing arm. And I'm using just a vise there to help me prop everything. And you'll notice I've got a TIG finger on. Shout out to Weldmonger. He's got his own channel, Welding Tips and Tricks, on YouTube here. Check him out. He's really good. Again, I'm using I think it's a 130 amp little tiny Harbor Freight TIG welder. So it's all scratch start. That's what I used for this whole build. Harbor Freight doesn't sell those anymore, unfortunately, but you could throw together a quick stick type inverter welder, a cheap inverter stick welder. You could, put a gas regulator and use it the same way. So this is that flange nut that I'm welding on to the outer tube. That will be something to fix the swing arm in place. Once you've selected your angle, then you tighten down the bolt and it'll fix that swing arm in a constant position. So you have both the tension on that inner piece when you're tightening that threaded bolt, plus you'll be able to change the angle of the swing arm. And I designed it this way because what I was needing to do was tension two different things. I was needing to tension the belt, which runs from the clutch to the transmission, and also I needed to tension the chain, which runs from the clutch to the flywheel or the engine. So you'll see in the vise right now there's a bearing assembly, and I just searched on eBay and tried to find the best looking one for this application, and this kind of was it. So it's cast iron housing and then just a sealed bearing in there, and I just tapped out those three holes. And here I'm just showing you I'm welding on a tab, and this tab, I'll show you at the end, holds the end of a wrench, which will be used for after you're done tightening that bolt to tension the system. Then you put the end of a wrench piece on and Allen screw it down so that your tension doesn't change, that bolt can't turn. So it'll be easier to tell at the end. And here I'm just showing you there's a bolt. I put the bolts in there before I welded the flanges on, thinking that it would protect those threads from boogering up if it got too hot or the weld started to penetrate through. Well, that was a bad idea because it actually either welded to that bolt or seized in there just from the heat, and when I was backing it out, it actually snapped off the bolt. Fortunately, there was enough thread in there to where it'll still work, but eventually I'll have to replace it. And here's just an overview of the final product. These are the two sides. You can see I bolted the bearings down onto the inner piece, which can be tensioned, and the flanges on the outer piece, which will act as a swing arm. And the jack shaft will go between the two bearings, and the clutch will ride on that jack shaft. Those are the bolts that clamp down. I'll show you later the bracket I had to build onto the frame. And here's the end piece that I was talking about. I just bought 2 Craftsman wrenches, cut the box end off, welded a little tab so the bolt couldn't come out, and then did a little Allen screw to keep them fixed in place. So after you set your tension, you screw those down on, and then the bolt can't turn. This was one of the more complicated parts of this build, was figuring out the clutch. And actually, for diesel bikes, custom diesel bikes, where you have a separate transmission, that's always the most difficult part of the build, is figuring out how to do the clutch and to connect the engine to the transmission. And that's probably one of the more difficult aspects of building a custom diesel bike, so this was one way to do it. Thanks for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.